Hello, hello, hello. I am waiting for Paul. He is at the audiologist's office right now. This could take an hour. I have to somehow make the best out of this hour, and I figure I might just as well make a video. They don't let me use their wireless, so I can't wait for Elon Musk to give Skynet, whatever he's gonna call it, and have internet anywhere I am. Okay, in the middle of a forest. I'm listening to the Requiem by Mozart, and Paul said very angrily, turn this off while he was still here. He said this is the worst thing he's ever heard. For me, it is the most beautiful music in the world. So that's how we differentiate on our music taste. He listens to the Beatles. I listened to the Beatles when I was 5 years old. I had a crush on Paul McCartney. My dad had the records. And I liked the Beatles for a while, but I don't know, somewhere around 16 or something, I completely lost interest with the Beatles. I switched over to Alexandra and Kasper. That's an oldie too. That's a German chanson singer from the 60s who was singing in German. I believe she is part Russian, half German. That's an interesting story, the Alexandra and Kasper story. So I might just talk a little bit about that in the blasting heat here on this parking lot. When I was a teenager, I identified myself as Alexandra and Kasper. Okay. I looked up to her. She said a lot of things that we teenage girls felt but didn't know how to express. She said those things in her lyrics, made them into songs. Her most famous song is Mein Freund der Baum, which means my friend the tree. This is an infinitely sad song. And I cannot sing that song without crying rivers, really. And then I have to quit. I have to stop. I'm just sobbing. And that happens all the time. One time I sang the song for Paul and he started crying too. Because I sang that song from Alexandra for our Port Orford cedar tree who passed away several years ago. On the Port Orford cedar fungus infection. Very infinitely sad. It's caused by pollution. Alexandra and Kasper. She's an iconic God level soul. You know? You can research her story. She was world famous. She also sang in English and in French and in Russian. she also lived in the United States. She was murdered because the mafia thought she knew too much, because she had been married to a spy named Nefedov. She took his name, a Russian spy. And back then that was the era of the Cold War and anti-communism and all of that, and they involved this innocent creative soul into this drama. She had nothing to do with anything, just because she happened to be mixed up innocently, unknowingly, with the wrong people. Horrific story, horrifically sad. She left behind her son, Alexander, who later moved to his dad in the United States when he was still young, I guess. Maybe the grandmother took him in for a while, and then he moved to his dad. To lose the mother at such an early age, infinitely sad. I'm not going to get into the horrific details of this now. People who are interested, they can research her if they want to. It's a story that's to this day had not been completely investigated all the way through. And I think deliberately so, because the corporate agenda covered this case up, didn't want this to come to the surface. The same with the Kasper Hauser story. Kasper Hauser, that's another German real life conspiracy thing. Well, not a theory, conspiracy fact. Just with Alexandra, Kasper Hauser was also innocently enmeshed in a big drama of power-hungry monarchs around him. That's a very convoluted story, and also very, very infinitely sad how a child had to suffer because of other people's greed. I don't know, maybe I should tell both stories now. Since I have time, why not? So I'm going to start with Alexandra. Or maybe I should start with Kasper Hauser, because Kasper Hauser's story predates Alexandra's story. No, I'm going to start with Alexandra's because I already started talking about her. But I'll talk about Kasper Hauser's story too. And maybe that's where the ghost comes from, Kasper. Because they tried to murder him several times. But finally they succeeded when he was, I think when he was 20 or something. I forgot the exact details of it, but he was starting to have, he learned how to talk, and he was starting to leak out. He was starting to have memories and flashbacks. So, but anyway, let me go back to Alexandra Nefedov. She was born in Germany, I think the eastern part of Germany. And she always loved to write songs, sad songs, and she played guitar and sang songs. And she was so deep her voice was deep and her mind was so deep and so powerful that people loved her wherever she went, wherever she gave concerts or even free concerts, and she was discovered by someone and then shot up in fame. Her songs were #1 on the radio in the 60s. People loved her songs. They could identify with that sadness. Also, particularly as teenagers. Later on, also, that lasted for a long time, not just during her lifetime, but beyond. And because, more than 20 years later, when I was a teenager, and listened to her music because my mother had her records. And my mother looked just like her. Very, almost identical. They almost looked like twins. So, I know I'm related to Alexandra Nevedov. That's for sure. Through my mother. We have that Russian gene in us. That Eastern European gene. And the sadness. And I sometimes sing her songs. And I've sung her songs on videos and uploaded them. Then it's not very good. But it shows my passion for her songs. I feel her songs very, very deeply. And Mozart, that's, for me, this is sacred music. Not because it was written for the Christian church. No. Mozart's Requiem and the Grand Mass are my two absolute deepest, most passionate music compositions that I have ever heard in my life. He was a genius and beyond. Deeply involved emotionally with this stuff and deeply creative. He was completely open for the infinite. And when someone is open for the infinite, then whatever they write or compose or paint or create for a rigid religion or any institution, whatever they make will always be leaping out of every someone parking in front of me with a sticker on the back that says coexist. So let me see if he puts that to the practice, that coexistence, and doesn't bump into our front of the van. No, she made it. Thank goodness. We don't have the drama today in this heat. I don't need this. I don't need extra problems. It's already problematic enough camping in the van with Paul. Trust me on that. It is survival boot camp training, to say the least. Oh, brother. I'm not very good at parking either, so I'm not gonna judge. But this music that leaps out of any kind of boundary and any kind of margin or law or confinement. It leaps out. It flows over. It grows over. It grows out and over and into everything else and above. And it uses, like I said before, it uses that what is as a color palette to create something artistic and funny and flamboyant. So the screams that Paul perceives in the music, that is perceived correctly. That is what Mozart was trying to portray. Some kind of inferno of existence. So and he uses the Latin terminology from the biblical scriptures, so like Kyrie and Lacrimosa. Lacrimosa means the tears, it's like where existence is painful and we feel it. And we feel it all the way, as Jesus Christ did and encouraged people to do, but it was misunderstood. Later on, people didn't listen to what he actually said, and so they will just rewrite it out of their own brain dirtying, out of their own indoctrination several hundred years later. So the actual message had been overlooked, which is sad. Yeah. I'm gonna have to put this down to shield the computer a little bit from the sun. That's better. The sun is blasting right onto the computer now. So Alexandra Nevedov, writing sad songs, finding her husband, I forgot his first name now, and he was a Russian spy. She didn't know. He never told her also, because to protect her, and to protect him, to protect all of them. Those spies, they may be concealing things from their wives or husbands. That doesn't mean their love for them was a lie or wasn't true. A lot of people misunderstand that. Alexandra knew that his love for her was real, no matter whether he would reveal to her who he is or not. That doesn't matter. That doesn't mean anything. But if you are not, even if you don't have to conceal your identity for some kind of profession, and I have to make this disclaimer: don't take on a profession where you have to conceal your identity. Don't do this in the first place. It doesn't do any good. I don't think it does any good. I don't know. I personally couldn't do it. So maybe some people have to do it in order to bust open crime rings and so on. I don't know. I personally couldn't do it. That would be horrible. To live in fear like that. I couldn't do it. I'd rather not know. Live my life. I help where I see immediate need for help. I'm not going to get involved in going against a Goliath of institutions, corporate agenda, mafia, whatever. It's like alone against the mafia. That's a big undertaking. So, yeah, I guess some daredevils are drawn to it. And she didn't know who he was. So they loved each other. They have a son together, Alexandra and Kasper. And so I don't know what the father is, if he is there in New York or something with his son. His son is my age, by the way. And I think he unlearned. I don't know. No, actually, he was giving an interview in German not that long ago. He was talking about the conspiracy, the actual conspiracy of his mother. He was speaking very well, although he hadn't been living in Germany for a very, very long time. So he has a U.S. accent now when he speaks German. I don't know if he speaks Russian at all, like his dad. But what happened is that when she became famous, I guess the mafia people, they started to get afraid that she'd use her fame to blow the whistle on the actual conspiracy that's happening. And there are conspiracies going on. People are murdered all the time. The murders are wrapped into something else to the public. The murders are concealed and made to look like suicide or accidents. Happens all the time. For anyone who thinks our authorities know what they are doing and they are looking after us and out for us. No. They're callous and greedy, and they want the public to be their pawns, their slaves. Okay, that's a fact. She didn't even know anything about it, but they thought she did because she lived with him, with Nefedov, and she must have seen things or discovered things or whatever, letters or whatever, interactions, overheard conversations, whatever. But she didn't. She had no idea why they were after her, what was going on. They started threatening her and started to threaten to kill her. And then they sabotaged. They caused her an accident. She brought the car to a car mechanic where the car was elaborately manipulated to have a brake failure at a very specific time after starting the motor. And when she went on the second vacation with her mother and her son, her brakes failed at an intersection, and she was killed, and her mother too. And her son on the back seat was very injured, but he survived. Very traumatic, horrific. And she was 27. She's one of those 27 Club famous singers and celebrities. Very tragic story. Such a God-level soul who brought us so much passion and depth. So, and that was in the early 60s. That was before I was born. No, wasn't, because I'm the same age as Alexandra. No, that was. No, she had the accident, I think, in the early 70s. So that's what happened. Yeah. Yeah, when we were like 6 years old or something like that. Tragic. So now going back in history, going back to the 1800s, 1812, I believe it was, somewhere around that. When, also in Germany, when in Baden, Baden is somewhere towards the south of Germany, there was a feudal range of royalties that were reigning, governing over that area. And with the royalties, they had this hierarchy where and a very misogynistic hierarchy, very sexist hierarchy. Only the male heirs were allowed to take on the throne if something happened to the father, to the king, or the next in kin male under that person, and so on in that ladder. And mysteriously, suddenly, in a cascading movement, every male of this rightly inheritance of power. I'm making a video right now of power. Then they all suddenly died from something like, I don't know, like illness, wrapped into, made it to look like illness, but it wasn't. It was food poisoning, deliberately done. Because there was another family in there who didn't have that rank, but they wanted to get in. Okay. And they even managed to get into the very close circle of the highest ranking ones. And they let them manipulate them, and this is all absolutely horrific what happened there. And so Stephanie de Beauharnais, the mother of Kasper Hauser, she gave birth to Kasper Hauser around 1812, and not long after the birth, the baby was replaced with another baby. The baby was really supposed to be murdered, but the person working there in that court who was told to murder him, he just couldn't do it. He felt very strong love for that baby, and he wanted to protect that baby. And he put a different baby in there. This is what happened. He had a very, very sick baby. His wife had given birth at around the same time to a very sick baby that was dying, and he replaced the kids. So he thought, that way I can spare the life of Kasper, And he took Kasper in. He was living in the same court. He took Kasper in and declared him his own, and the other one that he replaced, Kasper, that one died not long after that. Okay. And the murderers, they thought it was Kasper who died. So, and the person who replaced the babies thought that he saved one, and nobody really dared to really speak out against all of this, because if they did, they would be murdered too. So they were all to the mercy of those real criminal people. And maybe I'll make part 2 later, because we have to get going. Okay, guys, take care. Bye bye.